Hi, everyone. This is Kathy from Sagmar Native Plant Community. We are happy to be joining you tonight for another wonderful presentation for this time of year, the beginning of our garden season. And we have a special guest back here, Chris Baran, to discuss 10 great native sedges and how to use them in your garden. So we've been really looking forward to this one. For those of you who aren't familiar with our organization, Sagmar Native Plant Community is an all-volunteer 501c3 nonprofit organization in the Chicago metropolitan area. But don't think that these plants aren't going to be pertain to your area, because most of these plants have very large native ranges. So they'll be good for most people that would be tuning into this. So keep watching. And I also want to thank you for subscribing to our channel. It really helps circulate our content to more and more people. And with that, I am going to get to the main event, which is our special guest, Chris Baran. Chris, for those of you who haven't seen one of his other wonderful presentations that he's done for us, Chris is the founder of Resilient Design, which is a garden and landscape design installation and stewardship firm in Chicago that focuses on using native plants to create landscapes that are both ecologically sound and aesthetically pleasing. Chris is dedicated to transforming outdoor spaces into thriving ecosystems, and he has a background in horticulture with expertise in sustainable landscape practices, landscape and garden design, perennial plant communities, and garden stewardship. The Resilient Design team has over 20 years experience in landscaping, horticulture, and conservation. And Resilient Design proudly serves the greater Chicagoland area, working with clients across DuPage, Will, and Cook counties. So if you're in the Chicago area, look him up. But even if you're not, he's going to be talking about some amazing plants tonight that are useful for many of us, regardless of where we live. And with that, I'm going to say welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for coming back and sharing more great native plant suggestions with us.
Oh, of course. Thanks. It's great to be here. Hope everybody's doing well.
Doing well. The
Excited.
weather's getting good.
Yeah, excited for spring. All right.
All right. So you're going to get started.
Yeah.
There we go. I think. My arrow doesn't want to work, Chris. Technical difficulties.
There we go. Okay. So tonight we're going to be talking about sedges. Sedges are grass-like plants, gramoides, that typically grow in cool seasons, the spring and the fall. There's a variety of sedges for almost any kind of landscape use you can imagine. And if you need a rule of thumb, if you're wondering how to tell the difference between edges or sedges, rushes, and grasses, sedges have edges, rushes are round, and grasses are hollow. And then there's another version of that that's grasses have nodes all the way to the ground. So there's a little
The
rhyme.
grasses are hollow. I did
Yeah,
not know that.
the stems are
Oh,
hollow.
I got you. The stem. Okay.
And not the blades. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. So why do we love sedges so much? So sedges have a great deal of both ecological and aesthetic benefits. Sedges do all the great
Okay.
ecological stuff. Oh, there was some, sorry. Weed suppression, stabilize the soil, and then the temperature of the soil, stabilize the soil temperature, regulate soil moisture, erosion control, and sedges are also beautiful. They provide a lot of early spring color when the gardens are just waking up. They green up early in the season. Some of them are evergreen. They can provide texture and cohesion in the garden, and you can use them as the building blocks of your garden, those kind of like foundation layer plants. So we can use sedges as a matrix component. We can use them just like any other plant, right? As a matrix component, groups or mass plantings and drifts. We can use them as accents, and we can also use some of the more unique sedges as specimen plants in a planting. Carex albicans is the first sedge. These are in alphabetical order. So, and I just want to talk about, so before I start, the majority of the sedges that we're going to talk about, their native range is going to go from the plains east to the coast and go from Canada almost all the way down to Florida. So these plants have a wide native range. There are going to be some exceptions, and I'll call out the exceptions rather than reiterate the same native range for each one, because there's just a lot of commonality. So Carex albicans is a sedge we like to use a lot in dry shade. It grows about a foot tall to a foot, maybe 18 inches wide. Use it in medium to dry soil. They bloom in April and May. They're clump forming, and they'll spread slowly by rhizomes, but you would really have to be paying attention to see that. They take a long time to form a colony. And it's just a very elegant plant that provides a lot of texture in the shade garden. And you can use it as a ground cover or the matrix plant as the foundation to a shade garden where you have other perennials around it. One thing with this sedge is that every 5 years or so, you have to divide them. They'll start to hollow out in the middle and form a ring. So you can just lift that in the fall and divide it into 4 and replant the clumps.
So that's with all species of sedge?
No, that's albicans in particular.
Okay.
That's a characteristic of it. Mm-hmm. Carex blanda. This is a very versatile sedge. You can use it shade to part sun. Some people use it in sun. We'll talk about that in a minute. Moist to medium dry soil. It does spread by rhizomes to form colonies of little tufts. Not super aggressively, but it'll cover some ground if it's got open space. So you can use it as a ground cover. It's semi-evergreen, and it will tolerate full sun and live in full sun, but it tends to yellow out during the summer when there's a lot of heat. So I tend to not use it because I try to use all the sedges that stay green all season long and don't brown out or yellow out. So I use Carex blanda a lot, but in shade and part sun, not in full sun. Carex bromoides, the Brome-like Sedge. So you'll notice this looks a lot like Carex albicans. And it's very similar, very fine foliage, 1 to 2 feet tall and wide. It's full to part shade, but this one, Carex albicans, has this kind of shape and form in dry shade. Bromoides is for wet to medium moist soil in the shade. And they'll actually form little tussocks at the bottom, which are like where the leaves form that harden, the blades form that hardened clump at the base that they grow out of, because it can tolerate standing water where the water will collect around that tussock. So these are a great plant for a shady rain garden or in a moist woodland garden. And this is a great plant, like if you have kind of like maybe like a shady slope that goes down, you could use Carex albicans at the top upland part of that slope, and then transition down towards the bottom to Carex bromoides, and you'll have a very similar look that goes throughout the planting, but bromoides can handle the moisture where albicans can't. It would rot out.
Wow, and there's really a sedge pretty much for every location, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. So we'll talk about a little bit in landscape, sun is the most challenging for sedges. There are a lot of sedges that exist out in the remnants and in restoration that can take full sun, but they aren't as good. They don't do as well in manicured landscapes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So less to pick from when it comes to sun, but I guess
Yeah.
we have other kinds, but just a wonderful ground cover for
Hmm.
areas under trees. So,
Yeah.
pretty much like you said, there is one for every moisture level.
Yeah. Yeah. Carex cherokeensis. This is a sedge that I've been using a lot the last couple years. This is a bigger sedge. It gets 2 to 3 feet tall and 1.5 to 2 feet wide. You can use it in part shade to part sun. You can push this into full sun if it's got enough moisture, and it forms nice clumps. It'll form little colonies over time. In a larger garden, you could use it as a ground cover if you have a large shade garden and you need to cover a lot of space. And it's got this beautiful arching form with the seed heads that kind of like arch over and dance around in the wind. Um, I've been using this as an alternative to Carex springilii, which is more commonly used in our area for this kind of sedge niche, but that's a very aggressive self-seeder. Cherokeensis isn't as prolific of a seeder, so you don't have to weed it out of your garden as much. um, and this is one to note where the native range is a little bit more specific. This is generally found more in the southern US, like from Texas over to Florida. It does creep up into the like in the Appalachians to the mid-Atlantic and into some parts of Illinois, but it does well here. It does well, in our climate. They even use this up in Madison at Old Brick Botanic Gardens. Carex grayi, the Bur Sedge. This is a really cool one. It's a vase-like. It's got a vase-like habit, 2 to 3 feet tall and 1 foot wide. It's got those really cool mace looking spikelets. Anybody that's walking by your garden and sees those when it's blooming is gonna stop and check it out. It's just very unique looking. So you can use this in rain gardens. It makes a great specimen plant just because of the unique, seed heads that it's got.
Will this yellow out in sun?
No, if it has enough moisture. So that's kind of like the thing with a lot of these sedges take sun, that do take sun well. They're wetland plants. So it's like they need enough moisture to be in the sun. So the less sun those plants are getting, the less moisture they need. So there's like more sun, more moisture, less sun, they can take a little bit drier conditions. Not drought, they're not drought tolerant, but they don't need, constant moisture. They can take like a medium soil. And then you'll see a lot of these, I should mention too, um, the bloom periods, they've kind of got like a wide range. Like, could you go back to that last slide?
Sure.
Yeah, like May to July. Well, that seems like a long time. That's because these sedges, they have such a wide range, right? They have such wide distribution that in warmer, climates where they're found towards like the southern part of their range, they're going to bloom, in May, but up in Canada, it might not be until July, right? Because yeah. So like these have a large distribution. These sedges go all over the place for the most part.
I want to ask you something about that I've been curious about, never fully understood about sedges. Now, when we
Mhm.
look at grasses, a lot of people like look at a sedge and they think, oh, it's just a shorter grass. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
And grasses, form the seed heads, and those
Uh-huh.
are seed heads, and they're not pollinated by pollinators.
Right.
But this,
Same.
they actually call these flowers that a sedge has? I mean, we
Yeah.
always say that they bloom. Are these more like a grass that's wind
Wind
pollinated?
pollinated. Yeah.
Wind pollinated.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There are some, that'll have like some kind of like host capabilities like grasses do, but
Right, but they're
yeah.
not, it's not like they're gonna drop, don't be looking at them to draw pollinators. They're servicing the ecosystem in other ways, but they're wind pollinated. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Carex jamesii. You'll see they have a lot of like really creative names. Carex jamesii, James is sedge. This is a really nice sedge for the shade. I like this one a lot. It can take medium to moist soil.
Well, I
Uh,
like the way you pronounced, I've been saying Sprangeli. What
oh,
is the correct pronunciation of that one?
oh,
I,
I don't know. There's
I've been so,
Latin.
I'm so off on most of these.
I'm not Latin.
I know,
I'm not Roman, right? I don't know.
that's right.
Frangilii, that's the way I just say it, the way I think it sounds right.
The way it looks like it's spelled.
Yeah,
Who puts
yeah.
two I's in a row? Come on.
Yeah, and then it's like sometimes there are two eyes and sometimes there aren't. So it's like, wait, did I spell it wrong?
What?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so this is a really pretty sedge. It's really cool. As you can see in this picture, it gets this little like coppery tint to the foliage in the summer. So it doesn't really like brown out or yellow the way some of the other sedges do when they go dormant during the warm period of the year. It just kind of gets that little tint that looks interesting and provides a little texture change. This is a smaller one, 12 inches tall and wide, little clumps that'll colonize and spread around slowly over time. Oh, next, yep. Carex meadii. So this is the sedge that I've been using a lot in full sun. So this is prairies. This is a sedge you would find in the prairies. It's a smaller sedge, 8 to 12 inches. It's blooming actually now, like April, May, June, and it spreads around by rhizomes fairly quickly. It'll spread runners all over the place, but it'll just kind of pop up around its neighbors, not, bulldoze its way through them or grow on top of them. This is a really cool plant because it's evergreen and it has this kind of blue-green hue. And it's great to have something in our sun gardens that's cool season grass that gives you that green color early in the season. And you don't have to wait for like Sporobolus or Schizocarium to start greening up. This will be green from the get-go. It's a really nice sedge. Now, this is going to be a harder one to find. It's just been introduced to the landscape trade in the last couple of years by my friend Elliot Dumler. He's kind of the Carex meadii pioneer, but it's very popular. So you'll be seeing it in nurseries more frequently in the next few year or two. There's a lot of nurseries are growing this now to be able to sell in the next year or two.
Okay, I want to stop you there and ask you, because we all know that it is not easy to find native plants in your typical nursery, although
Right.
some are starting to offer more, which is a wonderful thing. But when you say that we're starting to see this more, are you talking about places that specialize in native plants, or your full retail nurseries? Do
No.
they carry these sedges?
No, I personally have never seen
Okay,
any of the native sedges in a retail nursery.
okay,
But to be honest with you, I haven't gone shopping in a retail nursery for a while, so I don't know what they've got.
right.
But the last time I looked at the native selections in retail, I didn't see maybe pen sedge, something like that you might find. Um,
Okay.
But these other ones, but you can get these, at the plant sales. Not this one in particular, but the majority of the ones that I've talked about, you can get at like the plant sales or from Prairie Moon or Prairie Nursery online before they sell out. Or from me, if you come see me at the Skokie Farmers Market.
And he'll be at our plant.
Starting-
That's right.
starting
If you go see him at the Skokie Farmers Market and yeah, and I just want to tell everybody, man, I mean, I'm just giving them a free plug here, but I got an order in today from Prairie Moon.
Mhm.
Boy, they don't be afraid to order online if you live in an area that doesn't have access to these plants easily, because um, my order from them, boy, they are shipped, packaged so well, and those plants come so healthy and
Yeah.
moist, and I've never had a problem with Prairie Moon or Prairie Nursery, so don't be
No.
afraid to online order.
Oh no, these plants, they get shipped around so much in boxes and trucks and
You never know what's flying through the air overhead, all
yeah,
those native plants flying around.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Carex plantaginea. This is a really unique looking sedge for our area. It's got these really wide, broad leaves that are kind of like this chartreuse color. Really pretty. It's a great accent plant in larger gardens, specimen in smaller gardens. Um, it it's a little bit particular. It does need some moisture, some consistent moisture, and it won't take a lot of sun. So shade to part shade, medium to moist soil. It's a smaller sedge, 6 inches to 12 inches tall and wide, but it's really beautiful. It's really good. Carex shortiana, short sedge. This is another taller vase-like sedge.
Come
It's
on, you
very
called it short sedge, and you're telling us it's
That's
taller?
because it's named after short. I know they're very, very, very creative names. So this is a sedge that doesn't need a lot of shade. It can go in sun to dappled shade, but for it to be in the sun, again, it needs to be wet. It needs to be, like in a rain garden, in a lower lying area of your property where there might even be some standing water from time to time. But it's got those really cool spikelets that look like little, like cigars or cattails, like mini cattails. It's a really interesting sedge, and they'll get really dark uh, throughout the season and change colors. So it's kind of a nice visual interest in the shade garden. Carex woodii. This is getting to be a very popular sedge in shade gardens. It looks a lot like Carex meadii that we saw, but this is kind of its shade counterpart. It's about 12 inches tall and wide, shade to part shade, moist to medium soil. This is a great matrix plant and ground cover. Again, it's semi-evergreen and it's got kind of that blue-green hue. This is a really popular sedge right now. 2 years ago, Mount Cuba Center released sedge trials, Carex trials, where they have all these test beds, sort of like they do at the Botanic Gardens here, where they're trialing different plants and seeing like how they perform. This was the overall top performer in their trials. Yeah, just because it's durability, the way it looked, the way it performed in both, in shade and different
So easy
conditions.
to grow and an easy plant for
Yeah,
people to put in their woodland garden.
awesome plant for a woodland garden. Oh, and then this is our bonus, not a sedge. This is Lazula multiflora, the common wood rush, and that's just because I like it so much and I use it in a lot of sedge gardens. It's a smaller plant. It's 8 to 12 inches tall, little 6 to 8 inch clumps. You can go part shade, part sun, moist to medium dry. It's a great access plant. It looks really cool. If you've got like a shade garden with some little like decorative rocks to poke this around the rocks, it's like a nice contrast. It's a really cool plant.
How would you recommend use like to get the red color? Is that more in shade or sun?
No, so that's I actually talked about that with a friend that grows it, and it's just random.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she didn't feel that there was any correlation between the sun exposure. Usually that kind of color does have to do with the amount of sun the plant gets,
Mhm.
but she hadn't seen any correlation with this plant, and she grows large numbers of them.
I bet that would be beautiful in mass too.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, so here's an example of how I would design a shade garden using sedges. So you can see you kind of got like, that lighter green through the middle is Carex albicans. It's going to be the major component or like the matrix layer. And then with little drifts of Carex blanda, Carex woodii, a couple little patches, accents of plantaginea, some little groups of Christmas fern, Tinidia, yellow pimpernel. That's kind of we talked about in the last video. It's in the carrot family, like golden Alexanders, but it's a little bit more delicate. Those yellow blocks there would be kind of a little group of Tinidia, kind of just like floating above the sedges, and then some little groups. The purple is Jacob's ladder. But again, you're just kind of using the sedges to create textures, different variations of the colors of, the shades of green. It's very calm, relaxing. Yeah. It's one of my favorite things is a sedge garden. Yeah. And here's some resources. So we talked about this, Carex for the Mid-Atlantic. That's the study that Mount Cuba Center did a couple years ago. You can go on their website and download that. You can even download it in Excel where you can see all the data and get access to how different sedges performed in different scenarios. Carex of Illinois and the surrounding states, the oval sedges. So that's specific to oval sedges. So they're like the sedges that have those oval shaped spikelets or seed heads. So that's like Carex brevior, Carex biconelli. Those are some very common like full sun sedges that you'd find like in the prairies. And you can buy those, from native plant growers, and you can use them in full sun. The only thing is they tend to flop uh, in the summer when it gets hot. They'll stay upright and look really nice in the spring, and then in the summer they'll kind of fall over and kind of like splay out, and then in the fall new growth will come up. So if you don't mind that look, some people like it. You can use those oval sedges for that. And then Sedges of Indiana and the Adjacent States, Volume 2. That's a great book. I was actually just had that out last night. I was trying to help somebody identify a sedge.
Were you successful?
No, I wasn't. I had to consult with the master, Elliot, my friend Elliot Doomler. He's kind of the master of sedges.
Can anybody stump him or does he know them all?
No, you can't stump him.
I wonder how many there are.
Oh, I actually you can find that. I forget. I think it's like I can't remember.
There's
It's
a
more
lot
than 500. I, yeah.
in the country or in the world.
Uh I don't know. I can't remember if that was total or native to North America.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. And that's like a thing. A lot of these plants, they're not known like in garden and landscaping because they need specific conditions to live, like out in the wild somewhere. Yeah.
Well, I know when I first, and I mentioned this in the previous presentation, but I just want to throw this in. When I first started, because I was a pollinator gardener before I knew about native plants and started doing native plants. So I've been gardening for more years than I want to admit.
Mhm.
But when I got into natives, I was used to like flowering perennials, and I
Yeah.
wanted to use my space for flowers and flowers for pollinators and just pretty color. And then I I started learning more about these natives and learning more about sedges, and then my resistance to use some of my precious space for sedges in my garden, ground cover under a bunch of trees, that's like a whole different deal. That's
Hmm.
just can be breathtaking. But I didn't want to give up my garden space to something that didn't quote unquote have colorful flowers.
Right.
And then when I started learning about how what what an amazing contribution these sedges make to our ecosystem in providing food and providing cover and providing habitat. And then I started adding them, and they make the flowering ones pop and look more spectacular.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Because they provide like that backdrop, and it kind of breaks up that like cacophony and like of just like, like you have like little rest.
Yeah,
Your eyes can take a break in between the colors. Yeah.
that's a great point. So when,
Yeah.
I always say that I think a lot of people who are just getting into native plants, they tend to be a little afraid of their landscape. They want to add natives, but they get a little afraid of it looking like a prairie.
Hmm.
And being messy looking, and like you said, too much for your eye. And so like such an amazing way to work with them, it seems, is to do areas, groupings of other types of flowering native plants with areas of sedges in between them. And that's
Hmm.
would be a great way to start using natives in a way that's not going to be like too busy for the eye or make you
Yeah.
feel like you're in a prairie with just so much going on.
Yeah. That's why we use so many grasses and sedges in our projects.
I've grown to love them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my favorite. I love the grasses and sedges so much. Yeah.
So much texture.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that brings us to the end already, Chris. Wow,
Yeah.
this flew.
Well,
Would
these are
you
like nice and concise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you before we leave though, I know we have your website here. Um and for those of you who live in the area and are going to be coming to our native plant sale, the Sagmar native plant sale on May 31st, you'll get to meet Chris there.
Oh yeah, we'll be there. Uh-huh.
Because Chris will be there.
Yeah.
And but I do want to ask, would you just kind of give everybody a little, if for those people who this is their first presentation that they're seeing you in, a little bit of idea of what you do, you know, what services you provide and so on. So for anybody who's interested.
Yeah, sure. So we do garden design, installation, and stewardship. The majority of the plants that we work with are native North American species. Um, we work all over the Chicagoland area. Um, any size gardens, there's no gardens that are too small, 400 square feet to 5,000, anywhere in between. Residential, starting to get into public spaces, and even some land management. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you do it all.
We're doing it all, building the team, building the practice. Yeah.
And I bet you're busy right now.
Very busy. Yeah. The last couple weeks have been really hectic.
Were
Just
you in,
getting plants in, getting contracts tightened up, getting prep work going. Yeah. Plus maintenance of existing gardens.
But
Yeah.
it's a labor of love,
It
right?
is. Yeah. Yeah. It is
Could
the
you imagine
best.
yourself doing anything else?
Well, a year ago. Yeah.
Oh, we don't
No,
want to
no.
talk about that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then, actually, we do have one question in our
Okay.
chat. Uh, would you recommend some warm season native grasses placed next to sedges to keep a consistent grassy look from the spring through fall, since a lot of the sedges get a little wimpy in the summer?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the ones that I was highlighting are ones that keep their form and color all year round. Um,
What about some warm season grasses to like put
for
in
the
with?
shade,
Yeah, yeah, because you're right. For the shade, because most of these sedges would be in the shade.
yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why I use the ones that I use because I don't have to worry about them declining during the summer.
Okay, so go
Yeah.
ahead and use some of the ones recommended on here, and you should be good. They shouldn't be like dilapidated as the heat sets.
Right, right. And then, I mean, the warm season grasses, it's kind of the opposite problem because they're typically in the sun where a lot of the sedges, you know, that
Yeah,
you
there's
would
not too many of the grasses that thrive in the shade, is there? Are there any?
there are a few, but they're cool season. You know,
Okay,
yeah,
so it'd be
like
the same thing. Wouldn't be
so
the,
beet grass, bottle brush grass is all right.
but they're still going to be looking their best early
No,
when the sedges are.
no, they stay green through the season too. They
Okay.
don't brown out. Yeah, beet grass is a good one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we had another comment that I've read that yarrow is good for a lawn type ground cover. It's mowable too, but if you don't mow it, it'll flower. Perhaps that would be a good match with sedges. Have you worked much with yarrow?
Um, yeah, I we use yarrow, but that's mainly you'll use that like in full sun. Yarrow doesn't really take a lot of shade.
I have to admit, I have yarrow that comes up and thrives year after year after year right next to my brick on the north side of the house.
Oh, does it flop?
No.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it
Yeah, I
does.
would, yeah.
I planted it there years ago and it's like it just kind of hangs in there. But for the most part, you say that in most circumstances, yarrow wants more sun than that.
Yeah, yarrows generally are full sun.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you once again, Chris, and have a wonderful planting season. Hopefully, we
Thanks.
will see you again in a less busy time, and we look forward to seeing you at the plant sale.
Yeah. See you
And
then.
thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.